Hello, hello, hello. How are you? This is Els coming from Bemis Crafty Corner, and we are going to be working on a folio. You know, not really a folio so much as a folio as a flip out for the Where the Wild Things Are journal. And so I am going to be making this. It's just a simple one. We're going to stitch it in, so it's just got a little angled pocket here in the front, and then it has a little pocket right here, and then there's going to be a spot here to put in a pad that we're going to make, and it's got a little 1/4 of an inch space to be able to put the pad in. And we're going to do this so that you can put a regular pad in here, a small legal pad if you want to, but we're gonna be making a pad. This pocket is going to be gusseted so that you can get some more space in there, and of course it's not going to be in purple. So I'm going to get everything out and show you the supply list on this one, and then we'll get started with some cuts and measurements. Okay, what are we going to need for this one? Adhesive. I do recommend glue, because if you're going to be putting things in and out of the pockets, you don't want them to stick on the tape. So I do recommend glue for this one. A pair of scissors is going to be helpful. You're going to want scoring tools and a scoreboard. You're also going to want, I'm just going to get these out of my way for the moment. You're also going to want a paper trimmer, and you're going to want a scrap of either thin chipboard, like a cereal box thickness, or some heavyweight cardstock. This is Recollections 110. It's just a scrap. It's minimally speaking, it needs to be at least 8 inches by 4 1/4, 4 1/2. So I've got this scrap here. I have some paper that I'm going to be decorating with. This is from Safari Chic from DCWV. It's an older book, but I think that it works for the Where the Wild Things Are. And then I have this vintage file folder. This is recycled press board, basically. It's from the 1970s. I'm going to be using this. It is a legal size folder. You can use a legal if you have one. If you don't, you can use 2 small ones, or one in some pieces you have laying around to finish this off. Now, I've already cut mine. I'm not going to cut this one. I'll just give you the sizes on that one, and we'll do the assembly, and then we're going to cut this one. In addition to this piece, you're probably going to want some paper that you can use to put in here to make a pad. So I will kind of talk you through how to cut an 8.5 by 11 to fit this pad so you get the most out of it. All right, I'm going to get this all out of the way, and I'll be back with the pre-cut pieces, and we'll talk our way through that, get the assembly started, and then work on the pad. I'll be right back. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut my file folder, and for me that means cutting a piece that's 8 inches, because my book is 8.5, 9 inches, 8.5 for my paper, and I want this to be slightly smaller, so I'm going to cut this at 8 inches. And once I cut this piece away, then I'm going to cut this to the appropriate width, which is going to be, for me, it's 5.5 inches, and then I have these 2 extra pieces which I'm going to keep. And then I have the other half. So out of the other half, I'm going to cut let me just put this right. Here we go. So out of the other half, I'm going to cut a piece that's 8 inches off, which gives me this. And then I'm going to cut this down, and this piece is actually 5.5 inches. Okay, so this is the part I'm going to use, and this is what I have that's extra. So let's go ahead and get started with this. The first thing we're going to use is this one piece that's the single thickness, and we're just going to put that in a scoreboard, and we're going to score it at 1/2 inch. And then we're going to score it at 3/4 of an inch. okay? And that is all the scoring we're going to be doing on this piece. Now on the file folder itself, on the natural score lines that are already in here, you know, there's the 3 score lines, we're going to fold the first one from the full fold, okay? So an easy way to do this is just to take a ruler, put it right on that score line, and then just fold it up, okay? There we go. So once we have that 1/4 inch fold in there, we'll go ahead and burnish that. So I'm going to fold it over. And this is really thick to work with. Okay. All right, so now we have that 1/4 inch offset. That is going to open to the right, okay? So on the left side, we have the piece that we just scored, and we are going to fold on our score lines and burnish this as well. And then once we have that, you'll see we have that 1/4 inch on this side here as well. And then we're going to take scissors and we're just going to reduce a little bit of the bulk right here. And we're just going to cut from the outside of that 1/2 inch fold up to the corner just to kind of nip that off, okay? So we leave that little flap. Alrighty. So once we've done that, we're going to take the longer side of the center, okay? Remember we have a 1/4 inch here, so we have that little gap right here. That's where we're going to put this. So we're just going to put a little bit of glue on our 1/2 inch flap. And then we're going to put that flap right along that edge, okay? We're going to match it top and bottom, and we want it to come all the way to the fold. So we want the cut side and the fold to come together perfectly. All right, and then I'm going to use my bone folder, and I'm just going to press that down, and then I'm going to reinforce all my burnishing. So now I have a piece that has a 1/4 inch spine here, and when I fold this over, it's got a 1/4 inch spine here. Now I'm going to set this aside and let it dry really quick. And we're going to talk about the notepad that's going to go inside, okay? I'll be right back. To make the pad that goes inside, we're going to do a couple of things. First, we're going to cut the back. And we're going to cut this at 4.5. So I'm just going to get this in the trimmer. Normally I would do this on the big cutter, but so that you guys can see, we're going to do it on the trimmer. So we're going to take this to 4.5, and then the length of our pad can't be more than 8 inches. So about 7.5. So we'll go to 7.5, and then we're going to go a 1/2 inch more, so 8. So all we're going to do is take a 1/2 inch, just a 1/2 inch off of this paper because this is 8.5 inches. So we're just going to take a 1/2 inch off. And now we have the back piece of our pad. And we need a piece to make the cover. So let me get a piece of this out. So I have another piece of paper, and I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to cut it at 4.5. And I'm going to make this piece 7 inches long. So we're just going to take it to 7 inches. We'll cut that off. Now that's going to be our cover. All right, so we have a back and a front, and then we need to cut some paper. And to do that, I do need to use the bigger cutter. So I'm going to go ahead and get the bigger cutter, and I'll be right back to show you how to cut the paper to get the most out of an 8.5 by 11 inch sheet for this pad. What I have here are 5 pieces of tea-dyed paper, and I'm going to cut them all at the same time. And the first cut I'm going to make is 4.25 inches. Okay, because our pad is 4.5, so we're going to take 1/4 inch. That way we have 1/8 inch on either side. So I'm going to make sure that all of my papers are lined up nicely. I'm going to put them in, and I'm going to cut them at 4.25. Okay, now once I've cut these at 4.25, I'm just going to set them to the side, and I'm going to pick the rest of these up. Now this is 8.5 inches wide, so these are going to be half of this is 4.25. So I'm going to cut this in half at 4.25, and that gives me papers that are 4.25 inches wide by 6 3/4 inches long, which is exactly the size that I want to go in here. I'm going to pull back the other ones that I used. We're going to go to 6 3/4 with these. This is the first ones that we cut. So we're going to go to 6 3/4 here, and we're just going to cut, and that's all that we have left. We're not going to get rid of it. We might use it, but that's all that we have left. Okay? And that, from 5 sheets of paper, is going to give me 15 sheets to go into my notepad. Okay? So I'm going to get this out of the way, and then I'm going to come back and we're going to assemble the pad. Alright, so we're going to get our scoreboard back out. We're going to put in our backer paper long ways. We're going to put 1/2 inch, and then we're going to go to 3/4 inch. So we're going to put 2 scores in this, one at 1/2 inch, one at 3/4 inch, and we're going to fold and burnish these. Okay, so now we have our piece here, and we have our little piece there, and we're just at 7 1/4, which is a good length, and we have all of our paper. Now this is the important part. We want to make sure that we have a nice flat end. Okay, and we're going to put glue. I'm using the Beacon, the 3-in-1, and I'm just going to put that on that 1/4 inch score that I have in there. Let me get, there's a little bit, there's some dried glue at the tip. There we go. And I'm going to put a nice amount of this here. Okay? And then I'm going to take my papers, and I am going to put them right up against that score line, and I'm going to fold this over. I'm going to make sure that they're where I want them, giving me about 1/8 of an inch on either side. Okay, and once I have that in there, then I'm going to use a couple of clamps here to hold all of this together. And I'm going to give this probably a good 2 or 3 hours to dry. Okay, so I'm going to let this dry, and then I will be back and we'll move on to the next portion. Okay, while we wait for the pad portion of this to dry, we can move on to decorating the folio itself. So the first thing is this side here is going to have a pad. So you have to decide if you want to put a mat on this or not. If you do not want to put a mat here, then don't worry about it. Move on. This is going to have a half a pocket, and you do have that seam here. So you're probably going to want to mat this one, the front cover, this cover, and because this is going to be sewn in, you're going to want to decorate this as well, because you're probably going to put a pocket on the outside here. Okay, so let's start with the basics. We want to measure from our fold here to our fold here. It is 5 and just between 3/8 and a half, 4/8 and a half, 3/8 and a half. So I would probably say if we're going to do 1/8 of an inch on either side, I would do this at 5 inches by, minimally speaking, 6. Because you're going to have a pocket down here, so you don't have to go all the way to the bottom if you don't want to. So I would do a minimal 5 by 6, okay? And I just write that on there because we're going to cover it. I just write it on with some pencil because I'm going to cover it anyway. And then over here, we're going to go from the fold line that we put in on that 1/4 inch score, and that is 5 and just over 5 1/8. So I'm going to go, if I go out 1/2 inch, it is 4 5/8 by, this one is going to have a corner pocket, but you're still going to see over here, so you want to do the full length on this one, by 8. And we're going to do a 1/4 of an inch at the top and a 1/4 at the bottom, so 7 3/4. Okay? So that's going to give me my 1/8 of an inch on all sides. Now this one should be the same measurement as the one on the inside, but we'll double check. Yes. Yes. So the outside is 4 5/8 by 7 3/4. 4 5/8 by 7 3/4. The back should be, it is 5 1/2 by 8, so it's going to be 5 by 7 3/4. And then this little flap is 4 3/4, so 4 1/4 by 7 3/4. So that's what I'm going to cut. Okay, so I'm going to be cutting 1 2 3 4 5 panels for this, and then we're going to be cutting some pockets. We're going to be doing a square pocket here at the bottom, and then a slash pocket over here. So let's take our extra, and we're going to cut our pocket out of this, and we want our pocket to be the full width. So we want our pocket to be 5 3/8. And I think we'll do 3 inches, 5 3/8 by 3 inches, okay, for our pocket. And then we're going to do a slash. And so for the slash pocket, I'm just going to cut the slash pocket at 6 by 4, and then I will just cut it at a diagonal, then measure and do my top piece, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and get started doing some cutting and get some pieces, and I'll be back with all the mats and the pockets and everything. And don't forget, we have to mat these pockets as well, so we'll talk about those in a minute. I now have a lot of pieces and parts. So I have my original folio, okay, and this opens to the right, and then to the left it's going to have a pad. So we need to mat here, 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 the outside back cover and the front cover, and we also need to mat a pocket that's going to be here and a pocket that's going to be over here. So let's talk about pockets first. All right. So we have two pockets. We have one that's going to be down here, and this is 5 3/8 here by 3. So I cut this at 5 1/8 by 2 3/4, and that gives me 1/8 of an inch all the way around, and that's going to fit right here, and it's not going to interfere when I bring up the sides, okay? So that was the first part, and we'll get to that in a second. Then the next part is this one. This is a 6 by 4, so it's 4 inches wide, 6 inches tall, and this is going to be what I'm going to cut my slash pocket from. So what I do is I cut a piece of paper that is 1/4 of an inch shorter and 1/4 of an inch narrower, okay? And I put the two pieces together so that the outside corners and outside side meet. And then I put this into my chomper, and I decide where I'm going to cut my pocket and make sure I keep everything lined up really well. And then I cut my pocket, okay? And the reason that I do it that way is so that when I back it up, I get a nice 1/8 of an inch all the way around, okay? All right. So now, let me just finish this little cut here. There we go. So now this is going to fit brilliantly on here, and it's going to give me that nice piece all the way around, okay? I am going to erase my pencil mark because it does show, but that will get inked and glued here. And then we're going to work on our mats. So inside here, as I said, it doesn't have to go all the way to the bottom or all the way side to side on this one because you're going to have that pocket. So we stopped short of going all the way to the bottom. And then over here, let's make sure we get the right one. There it is. We have a nice 1/8 of an inch all the way around on this one, and this is where this pocket is going to go. Okay, and I chose this because it's the same one that we have for the top of the pad. So then we're going to close this. We're going to have a pocket, a piece here. This piece is, yep, that's the right one. This one, okay. It just looks off because I don't have it folded up right. Okay, so we're going to have this one here. This is our front cover. And then we're going to have the map on the back. And we're going to probably do another pocket back here. So I will glue all of these down, but before I do that, I do want to talk about this pocket. So this piece will have to get placed before this one does. So the first thing we do here is we would ink around the edges, and then this pocket has the gussets. So I'm going to use a scrap piece and my scoring tools and my cutter. So I want to make sure that this piece is not more than like an inch and a quarter. It doesn't have to be any wider than that. Okay, so a 1-inch strip, and I'm going to want a couple pieces of this. So I do have a little bit of extra left over. I'm going to cut a couple of these, just 2 for this one. And then I'm going to put these in my scoreboard, and I'm going to score them so I can fold them in half. All right, if you've never seen me do this before, okay, that's one. And I'm going over this a couple of times because this stuff is really thick. All right, and then I will fold this in half and burnish. I'm going to burnish this really well. Okay. Then, once I have that done to both pieces, then I can cut the gussets that I'm going to be using on the pocket. So let me get the pocket here. And this is an eyeball, okay? One across the bottom. Cut. From the fold to the open end, wedge in. And then we're going to take the other piece, we're going to do the 2 sides. So I'm just going to fold this over, burnish it, and then again, I'm just going to hold it up and eyeball this. And I'm going to cut 2 pieces because I have 2 sides. Nope, not long enough. Okay. And if I want to gusset that slash pocket, I'm going to do the same thing there. I'm just going to cut these to fit these 2 angles, okay? So now that I have these, all I'm going to do is take my pocket and I'm going to get out my glue. I'm going to put glue on one side. And then I'm going to line the fold to the edge. I don't want to exceed the edge. I don't want to see it from the front, but I want it to be as close to the edge as possible. Okay? And once I have it on there, I will go ahead and hit it with my bone folder. That's just to press it down. And then I'm going to do the same thing that I did to this with these little ones. I'm going to wedge that edge from the fold to the open. I'm going to put some glue on it. And these are going to go on the sides. right up along the side edge, right on the edge there. I don't want to see it from the front, but I do want it as close to the edge as possible. Once I have it on there, I'm going to go ahead and use my bone folder to press it, and I'll do the other side. Okay? Now, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and get all these mats on here, and then I will come back and we'll install the pockets, and we'll see if that pad is dry and ready to go, and we'll get that put in as well. Okay? All right. So we don't want it to show over the side, but we want it to be right there. Okay. So those are your gussets. So when you mat this and you put it in, you're going to have a little bit more room in this pocket. Okay. So I'm going to show you that when we come back. I'm going to get everything matted up and inked and everything, and I'll be back. Now that I've inked everything, I did change out this front page because I had the same paper here, so I didn't want to have this one and then open it and I had another one exactly like it here. So I went with this one instead, which I think is, you know, it's with keeping with what we're doing. And I've got a piece on the back, and we have a piece on this in flap, piece here, nothing here because we're going to be putting the pad here. So we decided nothing over here. So let's get these pockets in, and then we'll talk about where that pad's going to go. Okay. So to put these in, we're just going to put some glue on these flaps. And then I just hold these two here in, place this where I want it to be on the bottom and press it down, and then just press the whole thing. This is a place where clamps are going to come in a little handy because this is really thick paper. Okay? And we just want everything to glue up and stay together. Put another one right there. Okay. All right, that looks good. So now we're going to put in our other pocket over here. I'm going to burnish these a little bit more because they're just not as flat as I would like. Okay, that's a little better. All right, again, just some glue. I'm just going to position this where I want it. Glue that down. I'm going to put a few clamps on this one as well. And I'm going to let all of this dry, and then when I come back, we're going to talk about where we're going to be putting that pad, okay? While this is setting up, we're going to deal with this piece. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the ruler, and I'm going to measure this flap. And this flap is 4 3/4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut from the little bit that I have left. I'm going to cut this to 5 inches. And then I'm going to cut 2 1 1/4 inch, 1 1/2 inch, whatever you prefer. strips out of that, okay? We're going to bring our scoreboard back in because this is where we're going to be making the piece where the pad is going to sit. So I'm just going to get my scoring tool here. So this is 4 3/4. So what we're going to do is we're going to go at 1/4 of an inch here. And we're going to go 1/4 of an inch on this side. We're going to do that to both of these. Now, if you just want to use one, you can just use one. It's entirely up to you. Okay? I like 2 because it holds it from flopping around in there. And then I'm just going to fold these over and I'll burnish them. And you notice I did go over this many, many times when I was scoring it, and that's to break that fiber down. I'm just going to burnish this really nice and tight. Now I can put paper on these if I want to, or I can just leave them the way that they are. That's my choice. So I'm going to take the first one, put glue on both sides here. And I'm going to press these in, and I'm going to center this in the middle. And we're going to hold for a few minutes and let it adhere. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other one. I'm just going to come down the page. And I want to make sure that I have the same width on both of them, so that when the pad goes in, I don't have it off center, okay? And that's beautiful. It's 1/8 of an inch for both of these on that side, and 1/8 of an inch on that side. Perfect. All right, so I'm gonna let all of this glue up and dry, and when I come back, we're going to go back to working on the pad that's going to go in here. So I'm going to set this off to the side, get the pad out, and I'll be right back. Now, what you don't know is this has been sitting for about 2 hours to dry. So I'm going to go ahead and take the clamps off. And if we did this right, our papers are all well glued in. Now we have this little piece up here, and what I like to do is take my ruler. Okay, I like to leave a little bit of the black showing, so I just come in about 1/4 of an inch, about half the distance, and I put a pencil line here, and that just gives me a guide. And then I'm just going to put my regular glue right here. And then I'm going to take my cover piece, ink it up, and then I'm going to place the top of this right on that line that I put. Right there. Okay, and then I can go ahead and put my clamps back on just to hold this, and set it off to the side, let that dry, and when everything is dry, I will come back, we will assemble this, and do a little decorating, and I'm going to show you a little trick for that pad just to snazz it up, okay? I'll be back in a few minutes. A little bit of detail for the pad. Once you have the pad all made, you know, and it's all glued up and it is solid, what you can do is you can take a ruler, come down about, half the distance there, about 1/4 of an inch or so, and then just measure in 1 inch from the outside and poke a couple of holes, okay? Just put a couple of holes in there. And then using some baker's twine, hemp cord, whatever it is you want to use, just go ahead and thread it onto a needle and then just tie this together. It's just a little added detail. It just dresses it up a little bit, makes it look a little more finished. It'll also help to secure the paper in there. So all I do is just sew to the back, bring my needle over and sew back to the front. Make sure that I have my 2 pieces equal length. And then I just tie a double knot here. And then just put in a little bow. It looks nice, it looks finished, and it looks like you have sewn the paper in. That's it. So once you have that part done, then the only thing you need to do is fit this into the book. And I'm going to tell you right now, you need to wedge the back of this. So what I do is I just take my scissors and I start at about 1/2 inch, and I just make a little wedge cut all the way to the top. And I do that on both sides. And I just take a wedge out. Then I can take this and I can slide it into my book, into my folio, and it's going to fit in and stay in place. Little trick here, if it wobbles around too much and you don't want it sliding around, just put a sticky dot at the bottom and put it in your book. That's it. I have some of our cut images and some that aren't cut yet. So I'm going to cut these out real quick. There's 1, 2, and I have a couple of monsters and a few of the flowers and things. So we will start putting them on here, and we're just gonna, you know, ink them a little bit just to get rid of some of that white on the edge. And I'm just going to kind of put these over here in the grass. And I'll go ahead and open this up. We can put some of our creatures in here. And these are some pretty big ones compared to some of the other ones. But they're stinking cute. Get my ink pad here. The top of his foot. Okay. So I'm not going to add another pocket in here because I think that with the two gusseted pockets on the very inside, that is going to be just enough space. Any more than that, and this will be too thick. So we're going to put him in here. This flower. And we'll put this one down here on the pocket. That's all I have for you today. I do want to remind you, I go live 4 days a week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. And I go live at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, so that is 11, 12, and 1 across the country. I also post videos twice a week on Mondays and Wednesdays. My Monday videos are typically some kind of a tutorial. My Wednesday videos are quick projects or a product review, something like that. So if you are interested in watching those, do look for them. In the meantime, if you haven't done so already, go ahead and hit that red button for me and subscribe. Like me, ring my bell, and share me with all your friends. And then your friends can be my friends, and my friends can be your friends, and our friends can get to be friends. And before you know it, we have a giant crafting community. Until I see you again, stay safe. Bye-bye.